Let's start from the National Executive Committee of the governing All Progressive Congress has dissolved the National Working Committee of the party. This followed the recommendation of President Muhammadu Buhari, who attended the Executive Committee meeting held at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. In the meantime, there are indications that more trouble looms as majority of the members of the party's National Working Committee may go to court to challenge the outcome of the National Executive Committee meeting. The Hilliard-led 18 members of the National Working Committee who refused to be part of the NEC meeting, that's National Executive Council meeting, said the meeting violated the party's constitution, quoting the party's constitution. They challenged the right of the Deputy National Secretary of the party, Victor Gaidam, to convene the well-attended meeting. The members believed to be loyal to the party's erstwhile national chairman, Dr. Shomole, and Senator Bola Tinubu announced his readiness to challenge the NEC meeting and its outcome in court. They said they are consulting with their allies and lawyers before disclosing their final steps. It's just a never-ending scenario with the APC. I thought the outcome of the meeting yesterday was to suspend all litigation.
Well, you can't really do that, can you? You can only, well, President Buhari is the one who said that. He made that proclamation. But you cannot do that without the consent of the people who have instituted litigation. You can't give that kind of an order. It did have a kind of a ring of my fellow Nigerians to it. If you remember those days, back in when President Buhari was General Buhari, that whole brisk, no-nonsense, laying down the law, taking charge. Exactly. But in a unconstitutional way. It had the optics for me were appalling, I have to say. You cannot, like the ways of my fellow Nigerians on the radio, the first thing they do is what? Suspend the Constitution. And I've said it on this show repeatedly. It appears that the APC members don't value their own constitution. It's not what the paper is printed on. They don't adhere to their own constitution. We saw again the Attorney General Malami swearing in the governor of Yobe State to be, and I'm sorry, I can't even say with a straight face, to be the acting national chairman. That is, it contravenes Article 18 of their own constitution. Malami swore in Oshiomhole in 2018, but I guess that flew under the radar because it wasn't as contentious as it is now. But now everybody has noticed how glaring that is. So you cannot...
Just for clarity's sake, Tundun, who is supposed to swear in the national, the national chairman of the party according to Section 18 of that constitution?
No, Section 18 refers to government officials not holding opposition in the leadership of the party.
Great.
Yes, but swearing in of the national chairman, I would imagine maybe the chief legal officer of the party.
The party has a legal advisor.
Yes.
So it's supposed to be the party's legal advisor.
Yes,
So
I would imagine.
That's a great point.
Not the Attorney General. And it was done in 2018. Nobody raised an eyebrow. This is why this has continued in 2020. It's not acceptable.
Well, a number of points. One, the National Working Committee is protesting on the basis of Article 25 of the Constitution of the APC. We say simply that only the National Working Committee or the chairman of the party can call a meeting. And to the extent that that has been contravened, and the meeting was called by Gaidam, that is not even recognized by, the former National Working Committee, which now stands dissolved. So they say on that basis they will go to court to ask that the meeting that happened in the presidential villa was illegally constituted. And to that extent, whatever came out of that cannot stand. Well, would they succeed in court? I don't know, because a similar situation occurred with the PDP when Modu Sharif was chairman of the party. And the matter, I think, if I recall correctly, was taken all the way to the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, yeah.
But at the end of the day, the will of the party prevailed. That's one point. Second point. We have always complained about President Buhari not taking charge of the party as the national leader and not trying to solve what looked like a drift within the ruling party. The fact that the ruling party was drifting was not good for the president. It wasn't good for the image of the party. It wasn't also good for the country because it looked, to borrow a phrase from President Buhari's speech, that the ruling party in Nigeria had become rudderless. So this morning describes what happened yesterday as a deft move by the president, and I agree. It was a very decisive move. You said It has the trappings of a coup of a fellow Nigerian kind of...
The military-esque...
I didn't say the word
not a coup, but a military-esque... A military-esque...
But when Nigerians hear fellow Nigerians...
You know what that means.
You know, the insinuation is very clear. But I think that, you know, he did well by trying to rein in the forces.
Did he rein in the forces, or he opened the fault lines?
No, I
because now
believe
they're
so.
going to court.
I believe so. Well, they may go to court. They probably won't succeed. So I think what happened was in order. The third point has to do with the Attorney General of the Federation being the lawyer in the matter. Well, I think it didn't look good because it's Attorney General of the Federation, not the Attorney General of the party.
A lot of people are even asking, why was it held at the Federal Executive?
Yeah, that's the fourth point.
The optics were bad.
They held the meeting in the council chambers, which is supposed to be, in my view, a sacred place. You know, meant only for cabinet meetings. There are other venues within that villa where they could have held their meeting. They could have used the banquet hall, either the old one or the new one. We also even have in the place house 7 where meetings used to be held. But to go to the council chambers could look like an abuse of a privilege. There are winners and losers in the matter, as has been pointed out. The winners will include the party itself, that looks like it's trying to put itself back on track. Another winner will be probably Ize-Iyamu in Edo State. Losers will include Shomole, will include, well, some people say, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, who was not at the meeting. But it's all up in the air in terms of who is winning, who is losing. But I think it's good for the APC to keep its house in order. All
right, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that, Tundun. That's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll have the trio, Rotus, Michael, and Aaron, to give us updates on Africa business updates and COVID-19. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our ever-dependable Rotus Odiri joins us now to give us Africa Business Update. Good morning, Rotus. Over to you.
Good morning,
Good
Doctor.
morning.
Good morning, Tundun. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Rotus.
Yes, thank you so much. We start with the pensions industry. There was a letter that was released yesterday to the Nigerian Stock Exchange from FCMB. It looks like they're making, that's the letter right there, they are making it into notification to the investment public and, of course, the Nigerian Stock Exchange that they intend to acquire ICO pensions. So, essentially, it's a proposal. This is just a proposal. They're just letting the public know that this is what they want to do. With regards to the details of the letter, they are intending to. It's going to be a subsidiary of FCMB, which is FCMB Pensions, that wants to acquire the ICO pensions. Now, I believe there's a 76% share, 70% stake, which is held by ICO Insurance PLC, 26% stake held by other shareholders. Once again, the acquirer is the subsidiary, FCMB Pensions. ICO Pensions will then be an indirect subsidiary of FCMB if this is approved. It's, of course, subject to approval from PENCOM, which is the regulator, and also the FCCPC, which is the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. Now, you know, why are they doing this? If you look at the total assets under management, AUM, for PFAs, which is Pension Fund Administrators, I've highlighted a few things here. The top two, the two players that we've mentioned, so ICO Pensions is at the top there. If you look at their weights all the way to the right, it's just 1.45% of the total assets under management. Then FCMB Pensions, they're highlighted as well. Their weighting is at 3%. Further down, Stanbic is the biggest, has the biggest share at 37.36%. I should mention, though, that this assets under management are from the website of PENCOM, the regulator, and it is as of 2018. We haven't got an update for 2019 yet. But the reason why this is happening is that we've got smaller players in the pool who are looking to possibly do mergers and acquisitions that can give them more market share and allow them to survive. So far, as far as total assets under management, as for the month of April, I think that's the last monthly update we got from PENCOM. It was 10.5 trillion naira. We have about 9 million RSA accounts that are retirement savings accounts, which are contributing towards the pool. So there's need for growth, but with where we are with COVID-19, job losses, pensions are a function of jobs, right? And so most of these are in the formal economy, although PENCOM has, of course, released a micro pension scheme for entrepreneurs who are self-employed and for people in the informal economy. So they're taking impressive, at least good steps towards trying to grow the industry, but then there are challenges there. And so the players here and there are trying to merge in order to allow themselves to survive going forward. From here, we go to the CBN. There's a tweet from the CBN yesterday with regards to the communique from the last MPC meeting that was held on the 28th of May, including personal statements from the members. One of the personal statements was from Aisha Ahmad, who is the deputy CBN governor, and she stated that 17 banks had applied to restructure about 30 or 32,000 loans. Most of these loans were in the manufacturing and commerce sectors of the economy. So this is, of course, as a result of the impact of COVID-19 to where a lot of loans had to be restructured. The central bank, of course, was already ahead of this a while back when they reduced the cost of their loans in their intervention fund. They told banks to go ahead and restructure loans with a number of borrowers. So they were ahead of this, but now we're starting to see some of the numbers coming out with regards to, again, just sticking to it's mostly manufacturing and commerce that have requested to restructure a number of loans. So, moratoriums, interest rates, stuff like that. So that's what we're seeing. And again, most of the statement actually in particular came from Aisha Ahmad, who is the deputy governor of the, there she is, the deputy governor of the central bank. Still on the matter of manufacturing, we've moved to the Purchasing Managers Index, the PMI. For June, on the left there, the overall manufacturing PMI, it's dropped. The red line that goes across at the 50-point threshold is where if you're above 50, then you're growing as an expansion. If you are below 50, there's a contraction. On the right is production level. You can see for both, we're at 41.1 in the month of June. If you follow that green line through the beginning from last year, June 19, all the way through to June 2020, we've been above 50, but then as things started to get a little tight, impact of COVID-19 and so on and so forth, we've fallen below the line. Now, this is a survey. The central bank carries out a survey, talks to manufacturers, asks them about production levels, employment levels, supply levels, so on and so forth. And then every month they release the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index. So this could be I really don't want to put too much weight on it to try and predict the GDP for the second quarter, but it's an indicator to some extent as to the struggles we might have when we actually see our GDP numbers. So one of these challenges, of course, with manufacturers, we spoke to the managing director of Afri Invest Securities on the Global Business Report about this, and he was talking about pretty much foreign exchange access is still one of the issues that manufacturers are seeing. So that's one of the issues that we're seeing with the PMI. From there, we go to Andela in tech. Andela is they're a U.S. company. What they do is they train software developers, but they've been heavily invested in Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, a number of other nations, African nations. They have faced issues. They had to do layoffs in May because of the impact of COVID-19. And the big news coming out from them yesterday, breaking news, was that they've gone completely virtual. They have sold office furniture, buildings, ended leases. They are going completely remote. So if you think about it, most young software developers in Nigeria, some of them are working for US companies and European companies overseas that are paying them in foreign exchange. So it makes sense for them to be able to work here remotely, doing software work. Remember, we talked about Amazon hiring workers in South Africa in order to service customers e-commerce customers in North America and in Europe. So with Andela is making a business decision here where their job description, what modus operandi is to train software developers in Africa and make them build the skills that they need to work for tech companies overseas, your Googles, your Amazons, your Microsofts, and so on and so forth. But the big news is that they're gone. So all these pictures you're seeing, there are no more. I mean, the offices are gone. They've sold everything, and they're going completely virtual. Finally, hush puppy, there was some news that came out yesterday. The Dubai Police Department put out a video detailing an Operation Fox Hunt 2. The team at the Global Business Report actually put this out on YouTube. By the way, we want to implore our viewers to subscribe to the Arise News YouTube channel. We've got lots of great videos there. In less than 12 hours, this thing is almost at 10,000 views already. So the fascination with businessmen that flaunt their wealth is still very high. The thing is, though, this gentleman with his cybercrime operations had about 1.9 million victims of his phishing rings, and also, I mean, his illegal stealing basically amounted to almost $500 million. So it took about 4 months for them to take him down. And if you look at we have some cybercrime stats here for Africa. With regards to, now this data is coming from a company, a consulting firm in Kenya as of 2017. Cybercrime cost African economies about $3.5 billion in 2017. Nigeria's annual loss amounted to about almost $650 million as of 2017. Kenya was $210 million. I didn't put South Africa there. I think they're about 150 to 200 as well. Highest software piracy licensing in the world in Libya and Zimbabwe as of 2017, where their unlicensed software is anywhere from 90% for both countries. So Africa still has a long way to go with dealing with cybercrime. It is growing rapidly on the continent as more Africans, of course, get online. And we are seeing situations where the authorities in Africa have to make stronger provisions towards protecting not only Africans that are online here, but also people overseas.
Thank you, Rotus.
All right.
Tundun, I think.
Thank you, Rotus. Yes. Yeah. Now we're off to London to join Michael Wilson for Global Business Updates. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Morning. Just adding briefly to Rotus's report, I did an item yesterday about the perils of working from home in the way that lots of us are at the moment, and it's very important to keep a very careful eye on the kind of requests that you're getting for information, because this remote working is opening up a lot of our systems to cybercrime, particularly in this country. I'm sure it's happening with you, and I'm sure it's happening all over the world. So make sure that you're using a reputable provider, and in particular, if you're having a business meeting, make sure that that is actually secure. You can do that through various systems, because you don't want people spying on what you intend to do in your business. Anyway, enough of that. Asian markets then. End of a rather choppy week because of that surge in the coronavirus infections. And that cast a shadow really over this theme that we've got all the time of encouraging economies back to work. The Hang Seng lower as the UK passed a bill that will target companies that are trying to help China chip away at Hong Kong's autonomy. Stock market in mainland China closed, obviously, as we were saying, yesterday and today for their public holiday. So broadly speaking, the MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan rose 0.3%. Nikkei rose 1% overnight. But it's been flat for the week, basically. I mean, that's the message. The Bank of Japan governor said that second-round effects of the pandemic could hurt the Japanese economy considerably. They said no to increase it to reducing interest rates, but they certainly will keep going with their help as far as corporate funding is concerned. S&P Asia Pacific will shrink. All these markets will shrink by 13% this year, but listen to this, they will achieve a growth of 6.9% in 2021. That is something of a V-shaped recovery, so that's quite optimistic if that is indeed true. The downside of all that is that world trade is down, as you would imagine, down about 13% in April. Eurozone hardest hit, down 20%. So Far Eastern markets really following a trail from Wall Street yesterday. We'll come on to the jobs figures in a second, but I think slightly more important than the jobs figures was the US regulators who've relaxed rules on banks being able to invest in or sponsor hedge funds and private equity funds. That's all very complicated. I'm no expert on banks, but I can tell you that what it does, the effectiveness of that is to free up a lot of cash for banks and also obviously the banking pressure under the banking system rather under pressure because of an argument that needs to be made about how much they're going to devote to bad debts and so on. So the more cash that they have, the better that they will be. The Fed also, coming on to the jobs figures I promised in a second, but the Fed also did a stress test on banks yesterday. They said that loan losses at 34 banks would total $700 billion. Again, I quote the figure, which is completely meaningless. But the fact is that they were looking at an economy which is shrinking by 10%. It's a job market which is shrinking by 10% when they actually did that survey. We've seen it do a lot more in the United States, so not too much. Don't attach too much to that, but it's certain that these stress tests are being applied. You'll remember the reason they are is because of the lack of them during the financial crisis in 2008. So all will be revealed really in the next reporting season of banks, which is coming up. Big rebound in consumer activity in the United States yesterday. Again, the jobs numbers fairly flat, but durable goods were up quite considerably. The US labour market finally got to it. It's sort of slowly and gradually improving, but not by a lot. 12th week in a row that the jobless claims reading actually fell. And it's encouraging to see and GDP down 5%. That's very much in line with expectations. So the health crisis in the US is an issue, but it had very little impact on the markets yesterday. As you know, there's been a jump, and you'd be just about to cover this, I'm sure, a jump in cases in Florida, Texas, New York and New Jersey. And the loosening of those restrictions has no doubt been caused, has helped that in a sense, but also there is this constant debate as to whether you actually release the conditions slightly to get some economic activity going. The collapse of Wirecard. This is an extraordinary story. In Germany, we got to a bit of it yesterday, spoke to Rotus later in the day about it, but since then, Wirecard has gone into insolvency. Now, so what? Well, Wirecard is one of the tech icons in Germany, and it's been under a lot of scrutiny from about 2008. For 12 years, people have been asking questions about it. What's been happening to the money? Where's it been going? Suddenly, we understand there's a $2 billion gap in their balance sheet. So unsurprisingly, into insolvency, the stock stopped quoting. But the real question is, what on earth were the German regulatory authorities doing during this time? Regulatory authorities have a difficult job. We understand that. They all seem to be bolting the stable door after the horse has bolted, as it were. But there we are. That's what they're paid to do. And they certainly missed out on this. So you can expect this to run and run. There'll be lots of lawyers involved. But there will be big regulatory questions asked about Germany's supposedly secure and whiter than white financial sector. As a tiny village in Cambridgeshire, which is going to be at the absolute centre of a classic geopolitical debate. Why? Because Huawei want to invest £1 billion into it. And the local council there, it's the local regulatory authority there, is saying, yeah, we'd like 400 jobs. Thanks very much indeed. However, the United States, unsurprisingly, is saying this is like a Trojan horse and a serious risk to European security. So we've got that to come, but that's a developing story. As far as the UK is concerned, the Chancellor's going to wait to see what the consumer reading is and whether people actually did go back to the shops or not before we get the next stage of the stimulus plan. We're hoping for something on what is now being dubbed Independence Day, July the 4th. I suspect, though, it'll probably be slightly later than that. We were due a fiscal statement on July the 9th. Again, I think that'll be slightly later because it'd be crazy to do anything right now. We don't know what the full picture is. And finally, oil. Prices rose about 2% yesterday. Fairly volatile session, but we talk about that spike in coronavirus cases in Texas. Houston energy companies have told their staff to stay away from their offices. This may have an effect on trading. Hospitals are running out of hospital beds to treat serious people. A slight, therefore, boost to the oil market as far as US demand is concerned because of that rise in durable goods. But again, any optimism limited by the rise in COVID-19 cases. So ending a week really of uncertainty, slight choppiness. Nothing much will change probably over the weekend. Back to you.
Well, Michael Oseni, I don't know whether you want to comment a little more on Huawei that you referred to, particularly Ericsson, the Swedish mobile operator, trying to position itself. Is there an American dimension to this, and how soon is the UK likely to take a decision on Huawei now that some senior tourists are saying that Ericsson should replace the Chinese company?
Yeah, well, there is that. Here's what I think is happening. I can't speak for the Conservative government about Ericsson, but I can tell you a little bit about Huawei in China. And what they're desperately trying to do is to increase their own semiconductor capacity and manufacturing facilities, because the US ban on WorldCom, for example, exporting technology to Huawei in China is affecting their ability to make these semiconductor chips. So this decision by Huawei, at least, to invest £1 billion into the UK to start a factory is going to be very, very controversial indeed. I think the government may have something to say about that. And certainly the government has been speaking to other companies about the manufacture of semiconductor chips. Again, I'm no technician, but they are essential. The kind of miniaturization that's taking place there is quite extraordinary, but we need those to keep ahead with our 5G technology. And there is a hope that it won't involve allowing Huawei any more entrance into what is a very, very sensitive market. But again, the old journalist thing, time will tell about that. I think this story's got a long way to run.
Well, thank you very much,
Mr.
Michael
Wilson.
Thank you, Michael.
And now for COVID-19 update, we're joined by Aaron Akerejala. Good morning, Aaron.
Yeah, good morning, Tundun. It's always a breath of fresh air hearing from you every single day. And Doctor.
Oh, lovely.
Doctor, it's good morning to you, Rufai.
Well, somebody here is frowning.
It's always expected, always expected.
Please.
Always expected. And let's actually start off today's update from the UK. And it's pretty hot in the UK right now, and a lot of people seem to be taking advantage of the fact that a lot of social distancing and the restrictions and the quarantine has all been relaxed. We've seen an easing of the lockdown, and that hasn't boded well with people, with authorities in the UK, because that's a beach in Bournemouth, and they have complained about the number of people, thousands, almost running to 10,000 of people that have come out at once with flagrant disregard for social distancing and complete disregard and irresponsibility for themselves and for others, because you see that there, and this was yesterday, and Matt Hancock has spoken about this, that the UK should not pressure the government into closing beaches, because they do have the authority to do that if these people cannot be responsible for themselves and actually condemn themselves orderly, because you can see the number of people in that particular beach in Bournemouth. Of course, it's usually a hot spot at this time of the season, but regardless, with all that has happened, they are afraid that if this continues, this might even spark a second wave in that particular region. And at the moment, authorities are really, really frowning at this. All right, even the local police and the local guides in these beaches are already saying they are stretched to capacity, but the people have disregarded completely any other thing. They just want to bathe in the sun, they just want to enjoy themselves, and they just want to live their lives, because as Matt Hancock claims that these people have been cooked up at home for far too long, so he understands where they are coming from. But at the same time, trust me, we've seen these things happen whereby the government are a little bit lax about the guidelines, and we see a spike again. All right, New Zealand is a typical example. They took their foot off the pedal or their eye off the ball for a moment, just a moment, and look at what is happening again in New Zealand. And if they're not careful, the UK, because let's get into the UK figures, as a matter of fact, to actually just break it down. As you can see, yesterday's daily testing was 232,086 yesterday, and you can see the breakdown there. 58,044 were used on people to see if they actually have the virus. 77,749 were posted to see if the people do have the virus, and that's the entire breakdown there. If you're still testing people this much and you're getting record numbers from the UK, and although the number is actually dropping drastically, but nevertheless, the UK is still one of the most worst hit countries in the world. This should not be happening, but it's unfortunate that is where we find ourselves today, and the UK people are completely disregarding this. As a matter of fact, Yesterday was a heartbreaker for me as a Manchester City fan who lost to Chelsea yesterday, meaning that Liverpool won the title. And Liverpool did not play. There's still massive social disregard. But the fans took to the streets yesterday, celebrating Liverpool. And once again, the police had been shouting and cautioning the people to keep safe distances from each other and respect social distancing. But the fans did not care. All they wanted to do was celebrate the first title in 30 years. And it's really sad what is really going on in the UK. And they should know better.
No, but they don't, Aaron. I mean, one of the theories is that the difference between human beings and animals is that human beings use reasoning and animals use instincts. But sometimes I doubt that theory. That lure of sun, sea, and sand was too much to resist for a lot of people. And you said about Liverpool as well. Yeah. You know how people are so emotional about football. So really, human nature is really coming to the fore with this COVID-19 pandemic, and in quite an unflattering way. You've talked here as well about how some people are resistant to wearing masks because they feel that they're trying to be curtailed and their liberties are being trampled on. Yeah. We're just a very strange bunch.
I can imagine.
This race, the human race.
And Tundun, for the record, I am a Chelsea fan. Aaron is a Manchester City fan.
My children are Liverpool fans. So
you need to follow the winners.
We're delighted.
So you need to follow the winners.
We are delighted.
Aaron didn't win. Man City, they are losers. So don't follow a loser.
All right, for the brevity of time, let's actually come into Nigeria, because a lot is actually going on in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, the controversy about states not having the coronavirus. But let's take a look at what is actually going on in the entirety of Africa. Now, this is a breakdown of the most confirmed cases per region. Of course, without a doubt, Western Cape province in South Africa has the most cases, over 56,000, followed by Lagos, then Greater Accra, then Yaoundé and Khartoum. And if we move on to the next slide, it actually now breaks down some of the daily numbers. Yet, just from yesterday, over 6,000 were recorded in South Africa, Egypt over 1,774, Nigeria and Ghana 846, Nigeria 745. Now, coming to Cross River State, it's really sad that you get to see things play out like this, whereby states are insistent that there is no coronavirus. You can actually see that figure there. As of yesterday, they claim not to have a single case, but the Don of the University Teaching Hospital there in Cross River State is claiming, Professor Ikpeme is saying that is not the case. As a matter of fact, he wrote a memo to that effect, if we can actually put it up, stating that as it is right now, there is a case of COVID-19 in the state. And this is not coming, and it's sad that it's not coming from the Commissioner of Health or the chairman of the COVID-19 task force in that state, or coming from the NCDC. It's coming from a man who has said that he has seen things go down in the hospital, and as a matter of fact, they've decided to take precautions, and they've put in measures to ensure that people in the hospital are safe. But as it is right now, COVID-19 is in Cross River State, even though the government of the day still refuses to accept the fact that the virus is actually in the state. And it might even be more than that, because at the moment, if the state is still living in a denial state, it's really, really bad. We saw this play out with Kogi State, but right now Kogi do have 3.
Quickly, let me comment on Cross River State.
Yes.
And make the point that I made previously on this program that, look, no state gets a medal for being COVID-19 free. What is important is public health. And political leaders should refrain from playing politics with the pandemic, which is what we have seen in Cross River State and what we have seen in Kogi State. Now, when the chief medical director of the University of Calabar Teaching Hospital issued a statement. He said, look, they had a case of COVID-19, someone who tested positive using rapid testing kit, and at the end of the day, the person was asked to isolate, and the person has turned negative, establishing the fact that University Teaching Hospital is involved in testing for COVID-19. And the CMD made it clear that they've been recognized by the Center for Disease Control as an independent testing center. And to that extent, they are not obliged to go through the epidemiology unit of Cross River State. Now, the Commissioner for Health now came out and said, oh, this is an attempt to label Cross River State a COVID-19 state. I don't get the argument. And Better Edu, that's her name, she went further to argue that, no, rapid testing is not the way to go. But this is the same state government that opposed the setting up of a G-Spark PCR in the Naval Hospital in the same state. So you find the state, contradicting itself. As for Liverpool, I think they should be congratulated. 7 more games to go, but they look like they will break all records this year. Beyond Man City, your club.
Thank you,
Well, it's
Aaron.
time now for a short break. Thank you very much, Aaron.